Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would talk about this video that I thought would be very particularly interesting. And this is going to be a video by that of DontaesBoxingNation, where, of course, he talks about the AJ Anthony Joshua versus Francis Ngannou fight, which, of course, as you can see by the results here, ended up pretty much in Francis Ngannou being folded like that of a lawn chair. And, once again, to be honest with you, I don't think that Francis Ngannou has the worst boxing abilities that I've ever seen. There are certain things that I actually thought that he did correctly, but once again, his defense was just not tight enough when it came down to it. And on top of that, he just fights way too tall, which happens with a lot of MMA fighters because, overall they're kind of taught, overall to fight at least a little bit taller than boxers, because they don't want to run into a leg or excuse me, overall, into a kick or a knee or something like that, which is understandable. So they have to fight a little bit differently. But anyways, when it does come to that of boxing, that's why I always, say the importance of boxing, even if you are in MMA, even if you are in mixed martial arts, even if you train in jiu-jitsu or wrestling or, taekwondo or Muay Thai or any one of those arts, boxing is still, in terms of hand-to-hand combat, it's still the most important martial art to learn, at least when we talk about hand-to-hand combat. Because there's not one other martial art in the world that can beat boxing in terms of hand-to-hand combat, at least overall usually. But, it is what it is. But anyways, within this video, Dante's Boxing Nation, of course, is going to talk about this. But the main conversation that I'm really going to bring up is about that of Tyson Fury. Because, of course, Tyson Fury, right now, in my view, he would still be looked at as overall the best heavyweight of this generation. But of course, that has been weakening a little bit, especially ever since his most recent performance over that of Mr. Francis Ngannou, where he really did not look his best in my view, or did not look very impressive. And, there could be a multitude of reasons for that. Maybe Fury overall, maybe he's not as good as what I once thought he was, or what a lot of other people thought that he was. Maybe he just heavily underestimated Ngannou and didn't train quite as well for that fight. Or maybe he's just aging a little bit. Maybe overall, he is about 36 years old. He did have a couple of wars with that of Deontay Wilder, someone who is a very heavy hitter and a very dangerous fighter at his best. So, it could maybe just be that. Who knows? Or it could be a combination of the three. But Tyson Fury, of course, in his next fight against that of Alexander Usyk, he's going to have to prove to the world once again that he debatably is the best heavyweight on the planet. And Fury, I've always had a certain amount of conversations or debates with people where people overall state that Fury is completely overrated and that he was never a top pound for pound fighter and blah, blah, blah. And I never personally agreed with those narratives. Now, if Fury ends up losing to Usyk and AJ Anthony Joshua, then I can kind of understand that, if he ends up losing one or either of those fights. But so far, Tyson Fury, once again, has always shown me that when it comes down to it, that he's always going to show up, at least when it comes to his big fights. Against Deontay Wilder and against Vladimir Klitschko, he was completely dominant against those fighters. And I understand that a certain amount of people say, oh, well, Vladimir Klitschko was a little bit older. Vladimir Klitschko was a bit older, sure, but Klitschko was still ranked top 3 to top 5 pound for pound unanimously on every single pound for pound list when it came down to it. And Fury was able to clearly beat that of Vladimir Klitschko at least 9 rounds to 3. Now, was it the most entertaining fight? Was it in the most dominant fashion that I've ever seen? No, but at the end of the day, Fury, when he had no other fight that was even close to that level of magnitude, Fury was able to completely outbox and outskill that of Vladimir Klitschko. No doubt about it. And then, of course, he came back against Deontay Wilder and in 3 separate occasions pretty much taught him a boxing lesson. And then, of course, he taught Dillian White that of a boxing lesson, someone that was able to beat guys like Joseph Parker, Alexander Povetkin, and a couple of other guys. So at the end of the day, I don't think that it would be fair to state that Tyson Fury is just completely overrated and a complete hype job and never a top pound for pound fighter. I can't really agree with that. Because if you're going to say something like that, then what you're saying is that, in my view, that the heavyweight division of the past 10 plus years really has been a complete joke. And I don't think overall that I can really state that. Now, if you want to state maybe that certain fighters are not as skilled maybe as what they were, say, in the Tyson Holyfield era, you can say that if you want to. But at the end of the day, a lot of these fighters still have their place in boxing, and a lot of them still are very particularly dangerous or have a decent skill set. But the question is now about that of Tyson Fury and Usyk and that of AJ Anthony Joshua, now that we kind of have a new little love triangle here, or a little bit more of a fight triangle here, The question is overall is who is going to reign supreme, who is going to be remembered as the best heavyweight of their generation. A lot of people, including myself, would have bet on that at Tyson Fury ever since he defeated that at Deontay Wilder, because a lot of people, including myself, thought that Usyk would be a little bit too small, even as great of a fighter as he is, for that at Tyson Fury. But taking a look at Fury in his most recent fight against Ngannou, we're not quite sure. Will overall Tyson Fury once again, will he reign supreme against Usyk and that of AJ Anthony Joshua, or will his career be remembered a little bit differently? Will he have a little bit of a black X on it? Will he maybe be aged out a little bit? Or will he just be exposed as a fighter that wasn't quite as skilled as what a certain amount of other people thought that he was? I'm here to kind of talk about that, and let's get into it straight with that at Dante's Boxing Nation. And notice Dante's Boxing Nation, the two heavyweight fighters that he's going to try to degrade or that he's going to try to demean. Like I said, when it comes to that Usyk-Tyson Fury fight, whoever ends up winning that fight, they're not going to be on the LDBC's or New Media's top 1 pound for pound list. They're not going to be debatably number 1, even though you could debate that whoever the winner of that fight is could potentially be the number 1 pound for pound fighter. You could debate it. They're not going to debate that because, once again, they don't like people like Tyson Fury or Usyk, and both of those guys are a threat when it comes to being remembered as the best of their generation. And they realize that if he wins against that of Usyk and also against AJ Anthony Joshua, that there's going to be a lot of debates as him the greatest heavyweight fighter of all time. And very well warranted. If he would end up undefeated, completely undisputed, beating every big name of his day, then that, of course, would be something that is very well warranted, but it is what it is. Anyways, let's get straight into it. Let's see what Dante has to say.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So staying out here in Thailand, I had to stay up the whole night till morning time to watch this main event between Anthony Joshua and Francis Ngannou. But it was truly worth the wait because it was one of the most vicious, one of the most destructive knockouts we've seen in heavyweight history. Anthony Joshua, he knocks out Francis Ngannou in the second round, knocks him out cold in the second round. Things all went downhill for Francis when he tried to switch southpaw in the first round. As soon as he switched southpaw, he got nailed with a perfect right hand by AJ that knocked him down hard. Now, perhaps Francis was...
Well, like I said, Francis Ngannou, you can tell that, he actually has a little bit, somewhat of boxing ability for an MMA fighter, but you can still tell that he's an MMA fighter at heart. He doesn't change levels very well. He fights way too tall. And in MMA, you're supposed to fight a little bit more like that once again, because you don't want to run into something, because once again, you don't just have to worry about the hands and that of a complete mixed martial arts fight. I get it. But at the end of the day, once again, that's why boxing also is very important to learn, whether you're in MMA or whether you're just trying to learn self-defense, because it will teach you a lot of different things. It'll teach you how to throw very articulate, not to advertise your punches, how to change levels, how to get your head out of the way when it comes down to it, how to fight in a multitude of styles with your hands when it comes down to it, and also how to use your feet, how to establish distance, how to, overall, do parries, feints, certain blocks, defenses. That, boxing, in my view, once again, even if you are in MMA, is still a very important martial art to learn, and that's why a lot of the elite champions and that overall throughout the UFC's history, a lot of them have learned a little bit of boxing as well. Not really in the same way that an elite level boxer has done it, but a lot of the elite level champions overall have learned at least a little bit of boxing.
Thinking he'd be successful because he was pretty successful when he switched southpaw against Tyson Fury. Not to mention, Usyk is the man who beat AJ twice, who fights as a southpaw. But he just didn't have the experience to switch southpaw against Anthony Joshua. In the second round, I noticed that Francis Ngannou, he was reacting to all of Anthony Joshua's feints, which was a very bad sign. AJ, he was doing so many things to set up those...
Well, the thing that I noticed about Francis Ngannou once again is that his head movement really just didn't change much. And he would go in there straight with the jab, but then AJ, of course, he pretty much knows how to, counter and parry that. So, it is what it is.
Those right hands. He was jabbing with quick jabs up and down, which is what ultimately kept setting up the right hand. So he knocked him down with another right.
And like I said, Ngannou pretty much would go straight in there. And then overall, AJ would basically say, okay, this guy's head really isn't moving all that much. So all I'm really going to have to do is kind of avoid it and then land my right hand straight down the pipe. And that's AJ Anthony Joshua's favorite counter. It always has been. He landed it against Charles Martin. He landed it against a couple of other guys. Whatever counter that, he's going to mainly land with that right hand, it's going to be a big banging shot.
And then the third knockdown completely put Ngannou to sleep. This was a very impressive win for AJ, especially when you could...
Well, that was an impressive knockout. At the end of the day, AJ, what I'll give him credit for is that he's defeated 4 opponents, I believe they say, within 11 months or a year. And I definitely give him a lot of credit for that. He definitely deserves it because it's not like the guys that he beat also were completely bums. They were guys ranked within the division. Jermaine Franklin, I believe, was one of them. The guy who had a narrow fight with that at Dillian White. AJ was able to beat him. He was able to knock out Robert Elenius. He was able to also knock out that of Otto Wallin, which in my view, at least in his most recent series of wins, is probably his most impressive performance and win. And then, of course, he was able to knock out Francis Ngannou, who gave Tyson Fury hell. Now, the question is, once again, about Fury, is that overall, why did he look so bad in that Francis Ngannou fight? Is it because he completely underestimated Francis Ngannou in that fight? Is it because that, he just has certain faults and isn't quite as skilled as what a lot of people think? Or maybe is it, a little bit of other things? Could it be that maybe he's aged out and that he's a little bit more wore down as a fighter? Maybe all three of those. I don't know. If I had to guess, I'd probably say that Tyson Fury just completely underestimated him, and I expect a better version of Tyson Fury in the Alexander Usyk fight and the Anthony Joshua fight. But who knows? We'll have to see. Because Tyson Fury, he could lose potentially both of those fights. We'll have to see about that. I personally think that Tyson Fury is a better all-around fighter than AJ Anthony Joshua. I think that he has better head movement. I think overall that he's a smarter boxer. I think that he has better feet, and I think he's better on the inside. But once again, AJ Anthony Joshua is a legitimate threat. And right now he has secured himself that title shot, whoever is the winner of Fury versus Alexander Usyk. And the dream fight, of course, would be Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua. So we'll see if Usyk can kind of upset the apple cart there, because Usyk, of course, is a real deal legitimate fighter.
Consider what Ngannou did to Tyson Fury. And when you think about the kind of chin that Francis Ngannou has when he's fighting in MMA with 4-ounce gloves on. And here he is getting knocked out cold for the first time with 8-ounce gloves. So now AJ is on to the next, and he waits for the winner of Tyson Fury.
And I definitely agree with that. What I'll say about that, once again, the fact that Ngannou in UFC a lot of the times was able to take so many punches. Like, I remember that Stipe Miocic first fight where Francis took so many punches. And there was a couple of times where he was hurt and stunned in that fight. But there was, he was gassed throughout most of that fight. He had no stamina past that round 1 or round 2. And the fact that he was still able to pretty much survive throughout that whole entire fight, I give Francis Ngannou pretty much a lot of credit for that, because that really showed the whiskers and the chin overall that he ends up having. But it shows overall that, AJ Anthony Joshua and these boxers, it shows the level of power overall that they can truly punch with. And that's why boxing also is important to learn, because when you talk about usually an MMA punch versus out of a boxing punch, because of the type of weight that is shifted into it and the type of technique, usually the boxer is going to have more power in that type of punch, usually.
Versus Usyk. And I'll tell you right now, if Tyson Fury wins that fight, AJ will beat Tyson easy. Now,
well, I need to see that for myself. And it's no offense against that of DontaesBoxingNation, but Dante really isn't the sharpest tool in the shed. And that's why a lot of his predictions he ends up getting wrong. And I'm not stating overall that I don't get wrong predictions. But that's why even when he ends up getting his predictions right, a lot of them can be way off base, or they're not as dominant as what he thought they were going to be, or the fight doesn't really play out as what he thought it was going to, because Dante is pretty much, he's a guy that believes in the triangle theory. That, because Tyson Fury looked bad against Ngannou and AJ looked great against him, AJ's going to defeat him really easily. Like I said, Tyson Fury, and you have to take other outside factors, Fury has always been a guy that fights to the level of his competition. And he's going to have to be careful with that, because if he is too dominant against Usyk and then he is too overconfident, then he could easily lose against either one of those fighters. So he's going to have to be very, very careful. But I think after that Francis Ngannou embarrassment in his career, I think overall that he's woken up a little bit and realized that I'm going to have to take these guys very seriously. Because overall, when it comes down to it, I damn near overall, tarnish my career with that possible loss against that of Francis Ngannou. I damn near lost to him.
Usyk wins, that's a different story. It's still going to be a very tough fight for AJ. But considering the fact that Usyk, he actually lost, got knocked out with a body shot by Daniel Dubois, that means there's a very good chance that AJ would actually win the third fight.
Right, but first of all, it's Danny Dubois. And second of all, when it comes down to it overall, he didn't end up losing that fight. But you see that Dante's Boxing Nation, once again, he has to try to tear down both Tyson Fury and also that of Alexander Usyk, because once again, Dante's Boxing Nation and new media, they're no better than that of old media. This is a propaganda channel. This is not, Dante's Boxing Nation is not a logical or a breaking down channel. It's an agenda propagandic driven channel. That's all it is. That's all it is. And that's why overall when it comes to both Usyk and that of Tyson Fury, he has to try to tear both of them down. Because he realizes that whoever the winner of that fight is, overall, that they could be debated as the best heavyweight of their generation. And if they retire undefeated, then that's even a worse nightmare for them. And they don't want that. Especially if Tyson Fury ends up winning. So once again, if Tyson Fury ends up winning that fight, all they're going to say is that, oh, well, you should have won that fight because you were way bigger. And I agree to a degree, but Usyk is a real deal fighter that has proven himself to be a real threat, even for the size that he is. So we'll see what happens. And if Usyk wins that fight, then they're just going to say, oh, well, he beat a cheater, overall, and they beat a complete hype job and someone who was overrated in Tyson Fury. That's all they're going to state. So once again, they always have a plan or a machination to make sure that these fighters are not remembered as the number one pound-for-pound guy of their generation. Even though you could debate whoever the winner of this fight is, this up-and-coming fight, is the debatable number one pound-for-pound fighter.
We'll see how it all plays out. That's all I got for now, guys, and on to the next one. All right, now check.
But that's about it overall for this video. But once again, Dante is a guy that, no offense against him, but, he's not really the best breakdown artist in terms of a boxing fight. That's why, when he talked about the Wilder versus Fury trilogy fight, he really had no idea what the fuck he was talking about. And that fight ended up no way overall in the way that he said it was going to when it came down to it. And then the Inoue and Fulton fight, he said, trust me, I know, Inoue is going to get dominated. And I predicted Fulton to win that fight too, but I knew that it wasn't going to be as dominant as what a lot of people said. Because Dante's Boxing Nation, once again, he's not a great breakdown artist. He's not a great breakdown artist. He doesn't break it down incrementally. Overall, when it comes down to it, once again, he is not a good boxing analyst, at least in terms of breaking down of how a fight is going to occur. Because he's very simple-minded when it comes to that area. He just looks at things on the surface. He doesn't include the context and also other factors. But it is what it is. Anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see where that of Mr. Tyson Fury goes from here, because he is going to have to step it up in his next fight. So we'll see. But anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to y'all later. And the last thing overall that I'll say once again is that we'll see if Mr. Fury, we'll see overall if he looks like the same fighter. Could he be aged? Could he maybe just be a little bit older? Could he maybe be a little bit more worn down? Or is it just because that Fury never was as good as what some of us thought? I don't think I'm going to go quite there yet. I just think that Fury, I think that he had completely underestimated that of Francis Ngannou in that fight. And I think that he was better and more athletic than what he even thought. And I think that Fury thought that Ngannou was pretty much just going to fold under the pressure once he started feeling the power and the punches in his punches. That didn't happen. And then, of course, once Fury ended up getting knocked down in the third round, that completely changed the tide of the fight. But it is what it is. Anyways, we'll see what happens. But Fury, once again, is going to have to step it up. Anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see where this goes.